Good morning, everyone, or good afternoon. I see John's not here. He didn't make it, so I can't tie into his talk, but I'll give it a try. My talk is kind of a soft talk, so I'm not going to talk about automation. I'm not going to talk about artificial intelligence or anything like that. But I think I'm going to talk about something that's possibly even more important, and that's really providing not good service, but excellent service. So just like John, I'd like to talk a little bit about how I got here today. When I first started my career, I worked in a factory and did basically manual labor. And so here's a picture of the factory. And you know, everything that we do and the jobs that we do before we get to being a software tester really impact how we learn and the way that we look at things. John mentioned skiing. You know, I worked in a factory, and at the factory I learned a lot about measurement. So tomorrow I'm going to be giving a tutorial on software metrics. And then I went to work at a gas station, and I would pump gas. Has anybody here worked at a gas station before? Anybody worked at a gas station? Okay, so you know. Back then we had what was called full service. And so you would go to the driver and you would say, what kind of gas would you like? And the driver would say, well, I want unleaded or I want leaded. And I would say, okay, great. You know, would you like your windows washed? And they would say, yeah, sure. So I would wash the windows, and sometimes, if I had time, I would wash the back windows also. And so what did I learn from that? I said, well, if I wash the back window, sometimes I would get a tip and they would give me 10 cents. Like, wow, you know, they must. So I was able to surpass their expectations by washing the back window. And that's when I learned about customer expectations and satisfying customer expectations in order to really make them happy. Then I went to work at McDonald's. Anybody here work at McDonald's before? Okay. So I worked at McDonald's, and my first job was cleaning the toilets and wiping the tables. And I can't say that I learned anything there, but I did get promoted. And I got promoted to making pancakes. And so I would flip the pancakes, you know. But I did learn something about pancakes, and I did learn something at McDonald's, and that was about process. Because as you know, every McDonald's pancakes are exactly the same. And so how do they do that? Well, they teach kids like me how to make pancakes, and you put the batter in like this, six ones at a time, and then you press a button, and it starts a timer. And then after a minute and 30 seconds, it goes beep, 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 and then you flip the pancakes, and then a minute later it goes beep, 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 and you put them in the containers, right? And so I learned a lot about process there, and I've been able to apply my McDonald's process learning on making pancakes sometimes to software testing. Then I went to work in a shopping mall, like the one across the street, the big shopping mall, and I would be in the center of the shopping mall, and I was selling fruits and dried nuts. And I would be yelling out into the mall. I would say, would you like to try a banana chip? And maybe you think, well, what did I learn there trying to sell banana chips? Well, I learned how to get customers into our store, but I think most importantly, it taught me about the user experience and the customer experience. So what we would do is we would have the banana chips here, but we'd also place the cashews right next to the banana chips. And then we put the pistachios right next to the cashews. So we're able to carve the user experience and having them do certain things, just like we are when we design our software, right? We want the user to do certain things. We think about the user paths and the user stories. So I was basically learning about user stories, not just selling fruits and nuts. So then, you know, I decided after all that, you know, maybe I don't want to sell fruits and nuts, and maybe I don't want to work at a gas station. So I think I'll go to college. And I managed to go to college, and I went to Cornell. And when I got there, what I discovered was I thought I was smart, but I'm not so smart because everybody there was smarter than me. And that's one of the reasons that I like to come to these conferences, is that I get to learn from all of you as well. So I started this company called ExpoSoft, and we focus only on software testing. And that's why I'm here today. I want to share with you our experience in providing software testing services to our clients and how we provide not just good service, but really excellent service. So, now we've been in business for over 10 years, and I think about every time I give a talk in my company, it's like 5 or 10 minutes, and I always have a little short message about different things that we need to do to make our customers, our clients happy. And that's what I'm going to talk to you about today. Now, we just passed our 10-year anniversary, and I was so moved. This is Jenny, one of our first employees, and she's still with our company. And I think about that and think, wow, what is it that we're doing right for our clients and our employees? And I think that's important for you managers out there, how to treat people, how to get them to stay, because that's one of the tenets of success of a service company is the people in the company and retaining them. And like John said, having them be happy, right? So Jenny just passed her 10-year anniversary, and I was really glad to have her. I know you guys probably just think I like pretty girls, but she's really a great employee. So let's talk about how we got here. We're here to test, I think, right? We want to be software testers, but why do we test? Why do we test? I think we need to think deeper about, rather than just following the orders, okay, test this software, run these programs, write some scripts that do this, right? What do you want to do? How do we go from good to excellent? And I think it's important to think about good service is determined by how you deliver information. The manner in which you deliver information is what determines good service. So we as testers, I know that you've heard, we provide information, right? Well, how do you provide that information? That's the key to success. So I think there are 4 tenets, 4 elements of excellent customer service. And I'm going to step through each of them one by one now with some good examples, I think, that will help you in your daily lives, not only at home, but also at work. So the first one is understanding. I'm going to go through all these in detail. First one is understanding. I think that it's important to really understand our clients' goals and objectives. So what do you think that goals and objectives our clients would have? Does anybody have any ideas? Stay in business. Okay, yeah, they want to stay in business, but how would they stay in business? What makes a client be able to stay in business? Quality product, right? So a customer might tell you, I want you to test this. And so do we listen to them, say, okay, yeah. Sometimes we do, but we also have to think about, is this really in alignment with the big goal for them to stay in business? And I think it's important I talked about this yesterday in my talk, to start with the end in mind. What is the customer really trying to do, okay? And it's important to understand what's important for them, and sometimes they can be different. Sometimes what's important to the client and what's important to the project can be 2 different things. So let's talk about what's important to the project's success. So a client hires you to do testing for them. So I like to think about it in 3 phases. One of them is really understanding deeply what they want. The second thing is getting it done. And the third part is making sure that they know that you got it done and that they received value from getting it done. A lot of times you can do things, but the client doesn't really know that it was good for them, or they don't know what the value that you provided. Anybody here run into that situation before? You're not appreciated, right? How do you make sure that the customer appreciates the value that you provide? Just that you got it done? Is that appreciation? And I'm not talking about that you want a pat on the back. That's not what I'm talking about. You want them to know the value that you provide. You want them to think, we can't release our software without you. That's how you know that you're providing value. So I like to think about, when I talk to our employees, I think about, okay, why has the client hired us? Why have they hired us? Well, they hired us because maybe they don't know how to do it. They hired us maybe because they don't have enough time. Maybe they hired us because they fear that there's something wrong with their software. And so at the end of the day, when we deliver a report, do we know what they want in that report? A lot of times we don't. And a lot of times our customers don't know. And we have to figure that out for them. That's what they're paying us to do, to figure that out for them. So a lot of times, your clients may not tell you what to do. They may not tell you what kind of results they want. They may not tell you what kind of report they're looking for. So you have to think about, from their point of view, what do they want? What are they trying to achieve? It's too hard. So sometimes they want us to solve tough problems, and sometimes they just want us to do it for them because it takes too long, because it's boring. Right? Sometimes we have to do stuff that we don't like. But think about why you hire somebody to do anything. Why do you hire a driver? Why would you hire a driver? Because you don't like driving? Maybe you don't have a car, right? So maybe they don't have the right testing tools. Maybe they don't have the right experience. Maybe they're afraid of crashing, right? So all of these reasons we have to think of, why would they hire us? All right? Why do you take your clothes to get them dry cleaned? Because you don't have the tools. You don't have the time. So we want to provide that value, thinking about, what is it that they can't do? Why are they asking us to do this? Right? Why do you hire somebody to change the oil in your car? You could do it at home, maybe. But they have special tools, and they can do it much faster. Okay. So the next step is really thinking about going one step further. Not just thinking about what your client wants from you, but thinking what their users want from them. You go one step further. What's important to their end users? And you want to be focused on providing testing, providing services, not only about what's important to the client, but what's important to the users of the client. The second thing I want to talk about is trust. And I know a lot of people talk about trust, right? Everybody talks, oh yeah, in Agile we have to have trust, blah, 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 right? But nobody really talks about what trust is. What is trust? I talked a little bit about it yesterday in my talk on Agile, but I'm going to focus on it today a little bit more. What does trust mean? So who here can give me their definition of trust? Don't all raise your hands at once. Don't all raise your hands at once. Who wants to give me their definition of trust? Anybody? I'm going to pick on somebody. I'm going to point to somebody. 1, 2, 3.
I put my life in your hands.
You put your life in my hands. Oh, thanks. That's a big... Okay. That means you can depend on me, right? Anybody else? Anybody else have definitions of trust? What generates feelings of trust for you?
Something like we depending on them, depending on the person that we love.
Yeah? Okay, right. So sometimes you have feelings of trust because you love them, you love somebody, you trust them, right? But what does that really mean? Well, I think, go ahead.
Something like we have a good chemistry sometimes.
Good chemistry?
Yes.
Okay. That's still hard to define, chemistry, but
Yes.
I'm going to go about here and I'm going to try to define it, not only for our lives at home, but for our work. You know, trust is really determined by action. When we do things, we create trust. It's what I call the tree of trust. Trust is created by actions towards one another and our clients. The first one is predictability. The second one is value exchange, and I'm going to talk about each of these factors in a minute. The third one is reciprocity. And the fourth one is vulnerability. So let's go through each of these. The first branch in the tree of trust is predictability. Like you said, John, you can depend on me. I'm going to be there to save your life, right? So, if you make an appointment with a friend to have dinner at 5 o'clock, and they show up at 5 o'clock, that starts to generate trust between you two. Now, what happens if they don't show up at 5 o'clock? You thought, I wonder if they're showing up. So if they do show up at 5 o'clock and you have this, you know that they're going to show up, then you can make plans for 8 o'clock to do something else with another friend maybe. So knowing that somebody is dependable enables you to make future plans. And so that's what our customers want from us. They want to depend on us so they can make future plans for their software, right? Now, sometimes stuff happens, right? We don't meet our commitments, we're late or whatever. What do we do in that case? What do we do in that case? Well, before we break our commitment, we call them and say, hey, I can't make it at 5 o'clock. I'm going to be there at 5:30. We don't just not show up, right? So the same thing with our clients. If you have a commitment and you can't make your commitment, you just don't hide and just hope that they forget, right? You tell them in advance, sorry, I can't finish the regression testing by Tuesday, but I'll be done by Wednesday morning at 9 o'clock. And that makes them think, oh, okay. They don't have to, I wonder if he's done or not. I wonder if they're done, right? They know, and they can make plans. The second one is value exchange. So our clients pay us, right? And so we want our clients to feel good about the value that they're getting. Just like when you go out to dinner and you pay for a meal, if you feel good about the food that you got, if it was good tasting, and you pay a fair price, you want to go back to that restaurant, right? The food is good, you paid a fair price, you want to go back. That's value exchange. Everybody gets something, everybody's happy. Same thing with our clients. The next one is reciprocity. So one of the things that we do in our company is that we use a model of a monthly retainer. And so the client, oftentimes when we start off working with them, they want a number of resources, right? And they want to look at hours. They want to say, okay, I want 10 people, and let's see, it's 160 hours per month, and it'd be this much per hour, and this is the bill, and every month we're going to look at your timesheets and things like that. And I say, wait a minute. That's not how we work. We want to be part of your team. Do you do that to your own employees? Of course not. And so we're going to charge you a monthly amount, and sometimes we're going to be on vacation, and sometimes we're not. You're just going to pay us a monthly amount. And and they say, well, geez, that's different than some other companies. And I say, well, that's the kind of trustful relationship that I want to develop with you. You know that we're going to be there when you need us. And sometimes that's going to be less hours, sometimes it's going to be more hours. We're going to work a lot of overtime, and we're not going to charge you. And so sometimes you help your friend do something, and they help you. That's one of the things, I know that Ruud is here, and Ruud is from Holland. One of the things about Holland, they say, is go Dutch, right? What does that mean, go Dutch? That means when you go out to dinner, and one person pays, you pay your equal share, your fair share, right? But what does that mean? To me, it means something else. What does that mean? That means that the relationship is over. Everything is fair. You can walk away. Now, what happens in Asia, a lot of times we treat each other, right? One person treats one time, the next time somebody else treats. And to me, that really creates a bondful relationship because you know you're going to be continuing a relationship. You know that over time, things are going to even out. You don't have this, okay, let's go Dutch. I pay my share, you pay your share, right? The last one is vulnerability. And so vulnerability means that somebody could take advantage of you, but they don't. Right? So you go to a store, maybe you talk to the clerk and you pay for your shoes or whatever it is, and then you pay too much. Maybe you give them a little bit too much money, or you were careless, and they say, hey, you paid too much. Here's your money back. They could take advantage of you, but they don't. So I'll tell you a story from one of our clients. One of our clients, we had like 10 people working on the project, and they said, oh, we need more people. Add 10 people, please. And so we added 10 people for a little while. And the person in charge of the project comes to me and she says, Phil, we don't really need 10 extra people. Really, we only need 7. And I said, well, I guess we should tell the client we don't need all those extra people. We don't want to pay us less money. You don't need all that. And you know, that client has been with us for 9 years. They're with us forever because they trust us. They know that we're not going to take advantage of them. So what is it that these 4 elements have in common? They have in common is really reducing uncertainty. So our job as software testers is to reduce uncertainty. Right? We want to provide reliable information. We want to provide information on time. Right? All of that reduces uncertainty. So all of your actions, you just think about, okay, so is this going to make the client feel more certain? Is this going to reduce uncertainty in their software? Uncertainty in the quality of their software? Uncertainty of knowing how many bugs are in their software? Right? We want to reduce uncertainty. And so we reduce uncertainty by trustful actions, implementing those 4 principles that I just told you. Right? Each time we do something, in the back of your minds or in the back of your clients' minds or in the back of your friends' minds, you're subconsciously processing and developing trust in that relationship. Now let's talk about communication and collaboration, the third tier. I believe that communication is part of our evolutionary DNA. We actually have communication genes. Did you know that? We have genes that make us communicate or not communicate. We have genes that make good talkers. We have genes for good listeners. And it makes sense, doesn't it? Those that communicate better, if you have two groups of animals fighting with each other, if one group of animals is over here talking and say, okay, you go over here, you do this, and I'm going to go over here and do this, they're going to win versus the other guys that are just, barking at each other, right? Does that make sense? So those that communicate will win. So let's talk about communication. Sometimes I look at some of the reports that our folks provide and I say, okay, let's look at this. What does the client really want? Does this help them? Does this reduce uncertainty? So you may say, today we wrote 9 scripts. Today we found 3 bugs. How can you write that better to reduce uncertainty and provide value to the client? Anybody have any ideas? I know that you guys are testers out there, so you know what we're talking about here. How about you?
What's that? Come again?
You mean you weren't paying attention?
No, I can hear you.
Okay, so how would you write these in a different way that would provide more value to the client? What's that?
The coverage.
The coverage? Okay.
9 scripts
9 scripts out of how many? Right, so you have to provide good context. That's a good one. So the point is that you really have to provide more than just a really short email. You have to provide context in order to provide value. Right? How can you present it so they can really do or know something so that they can improve? If I just say, well, we found 9 defects, well, let's see, what is the client going to do with that? I always ask my folks, I say, okay, based on that, what is the next question that they're going to ask? What is the next question based on that? And we want to provide that question before they ask the question. So whenever you provide something to your boss or your client, you think about, okay, this is the information. What will they ask based on this information? And that's what you need to provide before they ask. So we reported 3 defects. They're in the reporting module. Now that provides information that they can act on, right? They say, okay, maybe we really need to focus on the code quality in the reporting module and run some extra tests, things like that, right? Today we wrote so many test cases out of so many scripts, and we are currently planning on finishing at a certain date. This tells them, okay, we're on track, we're on pace, we're going to get done, right? That gives them information that makes them feel more comfortable, reduces uncertainty, right? We have a high failure rate, we're investigating it. So in other words, we wouldn't just report that, oh, we found 32 defects in the reporting module. We want to say, okay, we understand this is a problem and we're digging into it deeper. Because if we say we have a lot of defects, they're going to say, well, why? Well, we want to tell them, well, we understand there are there and we're working on it. We're digging into it. That makes them feel that, okay, these guys understand what's important and they're helping me. They're providing value. So we want to provide value, valuable communication. Some nuances on communication. Sometimes you have to say no, right? Sometimes you have to say no, and sometimes you have to say, I made a mistake, and I'm sorry. So what would be instances when you have to say no? What would be a good example of, okay, sorry, we can't do that, or it doesn't make sense to do that, or something like that? Okay. Everybody raise their hand? Anybody? John. Okay, John's going to raise his hand. John.
When they ask you to do something in a time frame that you know is impossible.
Okay. So maybe a client, and we've had this happen before. Actually, a client asked us to work over the weekend. And they told us on Thursday, oh, we need you to work Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. And I said no. And why did I say no? Because we wouldn't have people that stay with us for 10 years if I said yes. And that's important to our company. But, you know, the way that you respond to something like that is to say, okay, well, let's prioritize. You help them prioritize. Because a lot of times they don't exactly know what they want. What other instances would you have where you would say no? Maybe not no like that, but you would say it a little softer. Who has examples of when you would say no to your client or to your boss? We would say, no, that's not really possible, can't do that. What examples do you have? Do you have any examples? No? How about you? Have any examples of when you would say no?
Maybe a requirement doesn't really make sense.
Okay, so a requirement doesn't make sense. So maybe they want you to test a certain requirement and you say, hey, wait a minute, this doesn't make a lot of sense because it's not really fleshed out well. I don't really understand it. You just don't say, okay, you run off and do your thing, right? And you say, hey, wait, this doesn't make sense. Sometimes you have to say no. That's important. We need you. So when you're working in your Agile teams, so what do you think these two guys have in common? What's that?
Ex-wives.
Ex-wives. Yeah, I guess they have ex-wives. Actually, I just read a book called Quiet. And quiet is all about introverts. These two guys are introverts. Can you believe that? These two guys are introverts. And what's important to think about that is that a lot of communication, we think communication is all about talking, right? Actually, I'm an introvert too. And it's not only about talking and listening. So they think about, okay, talking and listening, that's the two things, right? That's communication. Well, that's not even communication. Communication is really about understanding, because there's a difference between talking, hearing, listening, understanding. What's the next thing about after understanding? The next step is really empathizing, putting yourself in the other person's shoes and thinking from their point of view. That's the next step. And that's what we as introverts tend to be better at doing than extroverts that just keep talking, right? We're thinking, we're really processing things. And so what I encourage you to do is to really understand from the other person's point of view. Communication and collaboration. What's the difference? Well, we can talk, we can listen, but the whole thing is to really collaborate. We talk about collaboration a lot in Agile, right? But what does collaboration mean? Anybody have any ideas? What does collaboration mean? How is that different? Oh, Laura. The other half.
Working together on something as a team.
Working together. So you have a common goal. You're working together to get this release out at 9 o'clock tonight, right? Outbound communication. I have this little squiggly line because a lot of times when we have meetings or when we write emails, we want to make sure that our communication is very clear, and that's important to your clients. I think one of the most important things is really what I say to our folks. I say, well, you know, the questions that you ask can sometimes show more intelligence than the answers you provide. So I think it's really important to ask good questions, well-researched questions. When you talk to your clients and you ask a question, what would be, and it's the same practice, so what would be the question that they're going to ask you based on the question you ask them? So what would they say? Okay, I say something and say, well, did you consider this? And did you consider this, right? They're going to ask me these things. And I say, well, I considered this, I considered this, I considered this, and here's the question, right? You want to show them that you really thought through things. That's thinking on their behalf. That's stepping into their shoes, right? You're thinking about all the problems and the questions based on those problems before you ask them. So we talked about hear, listen, understand, right? So we want to do this. Why do we want to do this? Because we want to predict problems. We want to predict and avoid problems. And it's important when you're listening very carefully to think about the spoken and the unspoken needs of your client. What would be some unspoken needs? Anybody have any ideas? So if a client says, okay, I need you to run through these regression tests by Friday night, what would be the unspoken requirement? John?
That they work.
Yeah, okay, that they work, that the regression tests work. The unspoken requirement is really that they want their software to be of high quality. And so just running through the regression test, does that mean that the software is going to be good after you do that? Maybe not, right? So you have to think, okay, we understand that you want us to run your regression tests. How about if we also do this and this and this? Because we know that we want to make sure that your software is good quality when it gets out. So you don't just want to listen to your customer, their spoken needs. You want to think about, okay, what else do they want? Here's something about value again. and doing more than just what they want or what you get paid for. If you're just doing what your clients pay you to do, you're not going to be around for very long. Why do they need us? If we're just doing because they tell us to do things, that's not going to go very far. Maybe a year. So let's talk about value. How do we provide value to really take it to the next level so that they do keep us around, right? How do we provide value? It's thinking about, again, thinking in your client's shoes, what do they expect? One of the things that our clients say to us often is that we can't release our software without you. You know our software better than we do. And so that's the bar. You need to understand your client's software better than they do. You need to be able to find deeper bugs than they do. Not just the UI bugs, but think, okay, if this type of user did this, and they did this, and they did this, then there's a problem. And your client says, geez, I didn't think about that, right? That's the kind of value that you need to provide, really thinking about the client's users and what they would do, not just executing any test cases. And that's where AI cannot go. That's how you provide value, and that's how you keep your job. If you understand deeply the client's software, they can't get rid of you. They're afraid, actually, because most development shops have a lot of turnover, right? Developers come and go. But if you understand the application deeply, you're irreplaceable. If you're only substituting for what they can do themselves, you're expendable. Right? So if you're only running 2 test cases, you're a short timer. I showed this slide. I told you I'd give 5 or 10 minute talks at my company. I showed this slide to our staff, and I said, what do you think about this? And wow, these guys have been married for 25 years, and they love each other, and they're loyal to each other. And I said, you know something? I'm sad to say that our clients are not that loyal to us. So we have to provide value every day. We have to show and demonstrate value every day. It's sad but true. I'd like them to be really loyal to us, and they've been with us for 9, 10 years, as well as our employees, but we still have to show value every day. And how do we show value? Well, I said some of these things before, right? We want to find defects that they can't find. A lot of times our clients say, wow, you found that. Geez, that's something I didn't think of, right? That's what you want to do. You want to find things that they don't find. You want to design test cases that they don't think of. You want to analyze defects in ways that they don't understand. You want to analyze those defects and find ways that they can design their software better, right? That's how you provide value. Ask questions. Save time. Explain things deeply. Doing things at the right time, the right thing at the right time. This is a picture of me having some beer. And the reason this is relevant is that this is in China. A lot of times you order a beer, and they may just come over and put the bottle of beer on your table. And I think to myself, geez, why do I have to ask for a glass? Wouldn't it be great if they brought the beer and then just as I'm starting to turn around and say, can you give me a glass, please? The guy's coming over and bringing me a glass right at that moment. That shows that they're really thinking about what I need at that particular time, right? And so you need to think about your clients. What do they need at any particular time and provide it at that right time? That's what providing good service is about, right? So what is the right thing? I think the right thing, you need to think about where is the complexity and where is the risk in your client's project or your client's software. Let's see how much time I have here. Okay. And I like to prioritize by getting done the most valuable things, right? The things that are very risky. So in your client's software, where are the most dangerous things? Where's the software the weakest? That's where you need to work at. And I'm always talking to our folks in our company. I say, so if this is not done, the project can not be done. What is it that we need to do or we cannot move forward? And that's how you prioritize. If this is delayed, the whole project is delayed, right? So, if we start off a project and, one of our testers says, well, I need to read through all these manuals and things like that. I need to really understand this particular plug-in or something like that. And I was like, is that really the most important thing to do right now? Maybe not. Right? Another question to ask yourself, if this is not done, will the client not see value? Ask that question to yourself. What do we have to show them? I always ask my people that. I say, what can we show them that shows value? What is it that we have to show? Well, we wrote these test cases. Is that valuable? I don't know. Sometimes they don't know what's important to them, right? So you have to help them. We need to figure it out for them. Again, you do that by stepping in their shoes, listening, and empathizing. We exist to solve their problems. Think about that. I am here. They hired me to solve their problems, not just to do what they tell me to do to solve their problems. They want me to solve their problems and understand their problems, not just do what they tell me to do. So here's some of the things that some of our guys tell me, oh, I'm doing this, I'm doing that. And I think to myself, is this the right time to do this? I need to read all the documentation, they tell me. I need to go through all their test cases, they say. Well, I need to research this tool. And I always ask, okay, is that the right thing to do right now? Is that the most important thing we need to do to provide value? Sometimes it's not. A lot of times it's not the right thing at the right time. It's important to think about the time. When is it the right time to do the right thing? So this gets back to the beginning, right? What report will you deliver to the client? Why did the client hire you, right? And so I like to think about the potential blockers of the project. And lastly, I'd like to make this word important, and that is distinction. We want to provide distinct value to our clients. Now, what does distinct mean? What does distinct mean? That means they can really see the difference clearly. Wow. Because of you, I can do this. Because of you, my software is 10% better. Right? We want to see distinct value. So there's distinct, right? That's the definition of distinct value. They used to be here, and now they're here. That's distinct value. And that's what you want to provide to your clients. Something they can really see. They're better because of you. We don't want to provide a little bit of help like this. That's replaceable. Oh, yeah, okay, thanks a lot. I appreciate it. Right? We want to be distinct. So here's what we did. So yeah, we did some configuration. We worked on a technical issue. We ran some tests. We wrote some scripts. These are all doings. A lot of times we get into doing. We wrote some test cases. We found some defects, right? But what distinct value does this provide? Well, let's think about that. Okay, well, we saved you some time. We need to think about that. Okay, how can we phrase this in a way that they understand that's good for them, right? We helped your end users. That's another thing that they think about in terms of value, something for their end users. Maybe they got more end users. Maybe that would be one. We did something and figured something out that you couldn't do. And then what is the value that's provided based on that, right? So, this task used to take 5 hours and now it only takes 1 hour. That's pretty distinct value, isn't it? Because this is solved, now you can test this other configuration, because a lot of times we have to solve configuration issues. Here's our analysis of your software and the defects. Now you can really focus your energy in this one section, and that's going to help you a lot. So I always say, think with distinct value in mind. What is distinct? What is going to be much, much different, not just a little bit different, right? The right time. Doing the right thing at the right time, I said, right? So what makes you feel special? Your spouse, your wife, your friend. What kinds of things make you feel special? Well, maybe when a waiter, they bring you, like I said, they want something at a certain time and they bring it to you without asking. Maybe you're outside and it starts to rain and your wife says, "Oh, I brought an umbrella here," right at that time. Right? When you think in your customer's shoes, it's easy to do the right thing at the right time. Anybody else have any examples of doing the right thing at the right time? No? Okay, I'm going to check my clock here. A few more minutes. Okay. So clients want to feel special too. And we want to predict and anticipate their problems and their needs. If we give them a report, we need to think, okay, what questions will they have based on this report? If we see a problem coming, we want to tell them, okay, this is a problem area, we're going to do this. Right? This is a potential configuration issue. These scripts tend to fail a lot. Why is that? What are we doing in that area? We want to predict and avoid problems for them. Right? And we want to do it before they ask for it. That's the timing part. Doing things before somebody asks for it. So we talked about a lot of things today. These are the 4 tiers of excellent service. We've talked about them each one by one. First one being understanding, empathizing with our client. The second one being developing a trustful relationship with our clients, right? We talked a lot about trust. We talked about communication. How to not only communicate clearly and concisely, but valuably. And lastly, we talked about value, providing really distinct value, right? Not just a little bit, but a lot of value. And that's how you become valuable providing testing as a service. This kind of summarizes it here. We want to anticipate. We want to initiate, do things before people ask them, right? And we want to exceed their expectations. We have to understand them very deeply in order to exceed their expectations. And lastly, you say, we want to intentionally provide value through trustful action and information that reduces uncertainty. That's what we want to do, not only with our friends and our family, but also with our clients. So I'll close today with a little story. This is a teacher of mine. I know some of you have heard this story from like 3 years ago, but most of you have not. His name is Mr. Larson. And this picture was taken in 2014. He's a teacher of mine from high school. And I called him up. I hadn't seen him for 20 years. And I said, Mr. Larson, I really would like to come see you. And he said, really? Okay, sure. Come on over and. And I went and I saw him and I said, Mr. Larson, the reason I wanted to come see you because I wanted to tell you this valuable lesson that you taught me 30 years ago, and I've never forgotten it. And he said, really? What was that? And I said, one day in class, at the end of class, you gave us a homework assignment, and you were ruffling through your papers, and you gave a homework assignment, and one of the kids says, Mr. Larson, you gave us homework. That's not fair. Mr. Greer, who is another teacher, Mr. Greer gave us homework too. That's too much homework. It's not fair. And Mr. Larson was fumbling around with his papers, and he looked up and he said, when you were born, did the doctor pick you up and say, life is fair, life is fair, life is fair? He said, no, he didn't. Do your homework. And so when I told Mr. Larson that, he said, really? I said that? And I said, yeah. And I said, that really stuck with me. Whenever, it's easy to say, oh, this isn't fair or whatever, And I think about some of the difficulties I've had to overcome. I always think of you and that lesson that you taught me. And he said, if that's all you got in all those hours of class, that's still pretty good, because that's a really important one. And now I'll never equal Mr. Larson, but I hope that you got something out of today, and maybe 20 years from now you say, Phil, I remember you said something. So thanks very much. I don't think we have too much time here. That's right at noon. Okay.
Right on time.
Great. Thank you.